My guests today are the dynamic duo from Knoxville, better known as Jake and Gino. They are partners in real estate investing, podcasters. They've got the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast. They're also speakers, and they're also returning guests to CREPN Radio. Jake and Gino, welcome back.
Hey, Darren.
Hey, thanks, Darren.
How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good. Well, I'm excited to reacquaint. It's been a little while since we last talked. I've been following you guys on Facebook, and I know you're doing great things. And before we do, if you could just take just a quick minute and refresh the listeners, remind them how you guys got into real estate.
Sure. You got a pizza guy and a drug rep on the line. We started trying to get in the game in 2011. 2013, we got our first deal. It was a 25-unit crack den. We turned it around, and I guess that puts us 2013 to going into 2018. About 4 or 5 years later, we got a $50 million multifamily portfolio, and we're vertically integrated. We have, we control every aspect of our business: the buying, the managing, the financing, and even the educational side of it and the networking. So it's been a fun ride, and we're just looking to grow it to 100 million, and then we'll work on doubling that and just keep growing this thing, right, Gino?
I think Jake left out the most important thing, which is he left out our mission and purpose. We were both guys working at W-2 jobs. We both, I wouldn't say hated it, but we used the motivation to move away from pain. Jake constantly kept getting that pink slip, 8 down sizes in 6 years, driving around with his boss at a Taco Bell. He's pissed off. He hated his job. I remember I actually went to Knoxville 2 months ago, and I'm sitting in a Starbucks, and all of a sudden I see this white come over his face. I'm like, Jake, what's going on, bro? So I look over in the corner. He starts talking, gets up, starts talking to a lady, comes back,
Just left.
doesn't even introduce me. I'm like, dude, I mean, I'm your buddy over here, and I found out that was his boss. So anyone who knows anything about NLP, neuro linguistic programming, Jake just completely shut down and went blank because he just saw her, and he remembers. It's right. He remembers the pain of that lady and sitting in the car. And not to get off on a tangent, but that was our mission and purpose. We both were unsatisfied with our jobs. I was around 40 years old. Jake was a lot younger than me, so he felt the pain a lot sooner than me. I was uncomfortable enough to be not uncomfortable enough. I was making a decent living, but I just said to myself, I want some freedom. I want my lifestyle to dictate my business, not my business dictating on my lifestyle. That's what pissed me off. And I think that's what I want the listeners to really figure out. Why multifamily for you? What is it for you? And if you can figure out the why, you're going to come across and figure out the how, like Jake and I did.
The other thing too is last night I stayed late at one of our properties. It was like, I think I left at like 5:30 or something, and the traffic in Knoxville has gotten awful. And all of a sudden I get on the highway, and it took me 45 minutes to go like 8 miles or something. And I was just like, oh my God, I am so thankful and fortunate that I don't have to operate in this world, because I'm never out at that time. Never am I out fighting traffic like that, stuck and can't move. And I'm just like, I'm looking around at all these people, and they don't know any different. They burn 2 hours of their life every day. They just light it on fire. Poof,
right.
Gone.
No.
And I'm just thankful that that's not my life anymore. And I think that's what we should all strive to get away from, because I can be spending quality time with my daughter, working out with my wife, doing whatever I want to do, instead of that. It's just that yick, that ugh. You don't want to be a part of that.
No kidding. I mean, being stuck in the grind, whether it's the bad burrito with the boss there, or sitting in
and
traffic.
It stinks, man. All these trucks and shit, they smell like crap, right?
No, I get it. I have quite a bit of flexibility in my setup here, and I know that when I'm trying to do it in the with the herd, it's just it's basically hurry up and wait, and you're all just kind of like just like I said, just like a herd. But no, I appreciate you guys kind of orienting and kind of focusing and taking a minute just to kind of set where your mind was before you got into it. And I think one of the things that I wanted to get into a little bit today is that Jake, you just mentioned the traffic in Knoxville, and I know that both of you are from New York originally, and how you ended up in Knoxville. I mean, that's because that's where all of your properties are, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
So how did you decide on Knoxville as being a a place.
So this goes into, this is a bigger philosophical kind of thing, right? This does not have really a whole lot to do with real estate. I was at the time, 35, going back to 11. I guess I was 28, and I grew up in Western New York. I moved to the eastern part of the state. I was working in Westchester County. For those of you who know, it's north of New York City, and I was like, networking with people like Gino, and I think Gino, your property taxes were like $28,000 in New York or something just stupid, and so as I was starting to understand,
28,000, was that for a single family home?
Yeah, that's for my house. That was for my house.
Wow.
So. Yes.
So I'm a young guy. I'm making good money for a top 3 pharmaceutical manufacturer, pharmaceutical vaccines, et cetera. And I'm just sitting there trying to do the math on this stuff. The taxes are outrageous. At the time, it was like 6.5% or something state income tax. And so I'm just looking at this. I'm like, is this how it is everywhere? So I started doing some research, and I started looking at places that didn't have state income tax. I started looking at places that had lower property taxes. And I was having the conversation with people. I'm like, so am I missing something? Because this is a huge swing. Like, I can give myself an immediate raise of, say, $20,000 by just moving. Am I missing something? And some people are like, oh, no, they get you one way or another wherever you go. And I said, are you sure about that? So I started doing some more research, and then I was like, okay, number one on my list. I was telling my fiance at the time, I'm gonna move somewhere and I'm not paying state income tax because I think that's bullshit, and I just don't want any part of it. Number two, I want lower property taxes, and number three, I want warmer weather. So we started chunking it down. We were looking at different places. I started this Excel spreadsheet, and fortunately, Knoxville popped up. It hit my parameters. It was on the eastern side of Tennessee. We could still get back and forth to New York. We visited it. And all of a sudden, I changed my mindset. This is what I want. I started researching jobs. Oh, wow, a lateral transfer popped up in the vaccine division of my company. It's funny how when you start looking for stuff, the pathway starts to present itself, right? I interviewed. The manager really busted my chops, made me drive back and forth a bunch of times, didn't comp expenses, and was putting me through the ringer because he was testing, like, is this is weird. Someone's coming. He was from New Jersey, actually, but he's like, does someone want to come down here? And he got it. But he was really putting me through the ringer. Finally, I swallowed all his shit, and I got the job. And before I was heading down here, I had doctors telling me, look, the way that I've gotten wealthy was actually not by being a doctor; it was the real estate. Gino was a friend, and he was kind of talking up some real estate with me. So before I left, I had the ambition to do more. I wanted to invest, and Gino and I started looking at properties, and struggled down here for the first 2 years trying to get into a deal, but. I think that the best advice we can give anyone on the show is hang in there and don't quit, because this is not rocket science. All the education, you can get it out there, right? You come to sites like ours, like yours, get the education. It's people think this is not going to happen. It's not real, and they give up. We quit initially after about 18 months, something like that, about a year and a half. But then something presented itself, and thankfully we re-engaged and got in, because we got so much rejection in the beginning. It was like a little boys club where if you're already in it, you're in it. If you're not, good luck getting in it. But once you get that first deal, you get your credibility, and then you can start knocking them out left and right. So it's just the best thing anyone can do is swallow the shit, stay in there, deal with the hard times in the beginning, because it's worth it when you get there. It will happen eventually if you don't quit.
Let me give a couple stats. Right now, what Trump did with his tax law, you can love him, you can hate him. Use logic. Don't use emotion. Don't care what he is or what he did. The reality is 450,000 people last year left blue states. Jake just sent me the thing to go to the South or to go wherever. So people are flocking New York. They're leaving New York. They're leaving California. They're leaving these blue states before this tax bill. Now, the tax bill is going to exacerbate that even more. Now, why is that happening? Because people are paying higher taxes in blue states. They're floundering the money. There's no job growth there. The cost of living, like Jake said, I went to a meetup in New York 2 weeks ago. It took me 2.5 hours to do a 1 hour commute over the Tappan Zee Bridge to get to New Jersey. That is such lost productivity. The quality and the cost of living up north is so much higher, and people are leaving. Now, this tax bill is going to affect that even more. So that's why we like the Southeast, the west part, let's say Arizona. That's another great area, but that's why people are leaving. They're leaving because of that. And I think it's a lot harder, and I think people overlooking another thing. Not just high wage earners are leaving. You're losing the young. You're losing the people that haven't even gotten into the workforce yet. They're leaving that. So I think that's going to really compound it. And I just see a lot of bad stuff happening in these blue states over the next 3 to 4 years. People flocking. They're going to red. So guys, when you're looking at markets, look for population growth. Look for places that are actually expanding. Look for infrastructure. Like I came down to St. Augustine because of the quality of life, the beautiful. Look, Jacksonville is expanding. They have infrastructure where they're actually able to grow. Look for household growth. Look for job growth. Amazon came down to Jacksonville. I missed the buying opportunity. That Supercenter they put down here. You've got healthcare coming down here. You've got banks coming down here. Insurance companies coming down here. See where the jobs are migrating to. And fortunately for us in Knoxville, we've got a manufacturing plant out there that keeps adding jobs and increasing, job growth in that part of the country. Don't look for places like, let's say, Cleveland, where they have one major employer. You want a number of employers in a market, and you want to see it expanding, and you want to see wages expanding also.
No, I appreciate all that, because that was kind of my I guess the starting point was that I understood you guys were down in Knoxville, but I was trying to. What did you know about Knoxville? So did it all basically start out that Jake had an opportunity to transfer, and that's why you started focusing on Knoxville?
Yep. So the reason why, this is the other thing, the reason why Jake and I partnered, he knew that I knew real estate. I was buying stuff in New York, and I knew Jake had an amazing work ethic. We always talk about the coach's sheet. He's got his coach's sheet. I'm sure he's got it right next to him. Put it up for everyone on YouTube. Very diligent, hard worker. What he would do, he'd come in at the beginning of the month, and I was doing actually catering. So he would know that Dr. X needed an order January 15th, Dr. Z needed an order January 30th. So I'm like, I can partner with somebody like that because I'm a hard worker and I want to work hard with somebody else. When I started looking at the per unit costs in Knoxville, the lower property taxes, the lower insurance costs, the lower labor, and the rents were not really that much lower than New York in some areas, and I'm buying them at such lower per unit costs. I'm like, Jake, we've got something down here. We can do something. And I wasn't savvy as to what population growth was or what employment numbers were. I just said, I like this market. I wanted to tailor to the mom and pop sector, people who are blue collar workers, people who are going to stay in these properties. Did we get lucky? We did. We started buying them back in 13 and 14. But I think hard work lends to luck. And we bought our first deal. We liked the market. It was something where, the numbers made a lot of sense back then, and they still make sense now. And the population is still growing. And we've actually had tremendous rent growth over the last 5 years because jobs are coming in. The supply there is not as much, and people are still not buying homes. I mean, the millennials are just not buying homes. They're saying there's a home shortage because they're not being built, I think. And for that sector, baby boomers, actually guys in their 60s and 70s, are actually selling their homes and going back to renting. So you've got millennials who are putting off buying, and you've got baby boomers who are retiring. So there's the perfect storm for multifamily I see going forward into the future.
No, that all makes sense. And I like the fact that you were saying it was the market was kind of secondary at the time. I mean, it was more about Jake lived down there, and you kind of ran the numbers and stuff. If you were going to select a new market, do you see the characteristics? I mean, you mentioned the job growth, and I mean, I think is that not necessarily the key element, that there's job growth? I mean, is that kind of the thing that you have to focus on in a marketplace?
I think it's huge. I mean, you want the more people that come in. Like I welcome the traffic that I went through last night, because I know the more people that pour into East Tennessee, the more properties are going to be worth, right? Because there's going to be a greater demand. And the cool thing is that we're insulated. Some of our places, there's nowhere to build around them because it's already very well developed. So you're going to have to keep pushing out and further to keep developing. So I think that's part of the insulation that we have. Also, we bought these things right. So if we can keep our rents super competitive, we can keep a great level of customer service, I think it adds a level of recession resistance, right? You never know what's going to happen in the future, whatever. But I think if we can remain super competitive, have great customer service, it's going to put us in a great place to succeed long term. But yeah, I mean, I welcome it. I remember when I first moved here, there was literally fields. I bought in the west part of town. There was some fields there. It's so I don't want to say overbuilt, but the grocery stores and the restaurants and everything have just flooded it. And you'll drive through. And 4 years ago, this was literally a field, and now it's just boom. There's cars everywhere. There's 4 lanes, and it's pretty interesting thing to be a part of.
Yeah. So Jake, wouldn't you say the secondary markets are important right now? Because the primary markets like Dallas, Fort Worth, Chattanooga, they've exploded because Chattanooga with the Volvo plant, I mean, you're maybe looking for markets that are announcing jobs. That's the key. If you see the jobs are coming into it and they've announced it, that's one of the key things. But we like secondary markets, even tertiary markets that are a little bit smaller, that are off the radar of these institutional buyers. Look for those markets because we have the city of Maryville, which is a sub-market of Knoxville. People are still close enough where they can get in the car 10, 15 minutes and drive to Knoxville for their jobs. So look for those secondary markets because you can buy them at a little bit of a discount. The institutions aren't in there as much as they are in the primary markets. There's still a lot of cities out there. I mean, Jake and I are looking at Atlanta right now. Atlanta is amazing. The job growth is amazing there, but the prices reflect that because there's a lot of competition. So maybe Atlanta might not be the market, but maybe there's markets Decatur that are a submarket of Atlanta that you can look at that are feeding into Atlanta.
Right.
I also think you can keep it simple and just say, go the college football route, and if you invest in the SEC, you're probably going to be okay, right?
They certainly dominate college football. So.
College football, apartments, and a little bit of Chick-fil-A. All right, it's a good path to victory.
That's the recipe. The 1, 2, 3.
It is.
So. All right. So let me ask you another question. So you guys, you were a drug rep and restaurateur, and how long have you been exclusively real estate?
I quit. When did I quit, Gino? 2013?
You quit in 2014. February 2014, we bought the 136 units. Like 2 months after that.
Oh, that's right.
You were like, yeah, I know your story intimately because I remember he got out, and I'm like, wow, that motivated me to get out because I'm sitting in my shed.
If he's doing, I'm out next, man.
Well, I should tell the story. We're sitting there, we're negotiating an $11 million deal, and I have one restaurant, working hard, and I'm sitting in my shed, putting away these aluminum tins, doing $10 an hour work. I'm saying to myself, I'm on the phone doing an $11 million deal, and I'm like doing $10 an hour work. So I was at inflection point. My thing that held me back was my high cost of living, and I've got 6 kids. So I have a big nut compared to a lot of other people. That's just an excuse, right? That was my excuse. But I said to myself, he got out. That's going to motivate me to get out. So I got out in March of 2016. I just said to my brother, "Say here's the keys. Do what you want to do. I'm out." And it was great. I mean, I loved working at the restaurant, dealing with people, dealing with customers, but it was just a total grind. I remember sitting there during lunchtime doing articles for Jake and Gino, getting the podcast ready, and I'd have my mom walk over and go, "Why are you working?" All the time. I said, this is not work right now. This is pleasure. I like this. So I said to myself, if I like what I'm doing, why don't I just get out of what I'm not doing? And it took me a little while to do that, obviously, but that's what I strove for. That motivation was going towards pleasure, working with the Jake and Gino. So it took me, I'd say, for about 3.5 years after I started investing to call it quits.
So, I want to touch on something real quick, Darren, because I think this is a big, important, overarching thing. You can work your ass off for, say, 2 to 3 years to quit whatever kind of corporate grind that you're in and be done forever. If you're willing to put in 18-hour days, I think it's possible for anybody. And I know it's a little cliche. People say, stop doing shit you hate, and there's all these Instagram memes. But that's the idea, though. You bust your ass for a handful of years. You stop doing the corporate thing. You start working for yourself. You start building on yourself, and then you start to delegate more and more out of what you don't want to do and focus on the stuff that you enjoy, that you're good at. Because you're not only going to be better serving your company, you're going to be better serving your family. You're going to be building a better life for yourself, and it all just keeps getting rolling up. And it's just basically you're forming a life for yourself, and your business is incorporated into it, right? So I think that's been a takeaway over the last few years for myself.
But Jake, how do we do that though? The reason why we were successful to do that was we had our own little mastermind. We were partners. We held each other accountable. I've gone on to join other mastermind groups. You need to surround yourself with like-minded individuals. If you're around the corporate grind and you're starting to tell people, well, I'm going to quit this to do multifamily, you're going to get the pushback by going, real estate's risky, you're out of your mind, you're crazy. Well, when I talk to my friends now, they're all like, dude, what's the next deal? Where are we going? So it means a lot to surround yourself with people who are like-minded. Not everyone's going to be like-minded like you, but if you know someone's going to be hate on you, don't tell them your aspirations, your passions. Come into the Jake and Gino community. Come into our private Facebook group. Start sharing your successes with others, and people are going to start wanting networking with you. They're going to want to partner with you. They're going to give you ideas. So it's very important to get out of the space you're in, I guess, mentally, and just to get new friends or get new groups of people that are going to actually help you and work with you and give you that, I guess, inspiration. Because there's tough. It does become tough sometimes, and we've had our issues and our problems. But you know what? He's only a phone call away. So when something's going wrong with the property, he gives me a call. He has a second opinion, and I think that was one of our. For partnerships, I think that was one of the most important things that was in our partnership.
No, I like the accountability, and I think even more just how uncomfortable you became. You know, I mean, it sounds like Jake woke up to the numbers. He's going, whoa, 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 this isn't cool. I'm out. And it was kind of I got to find a different place. And then you guys got into the second property, and he was able to move up, from the corporate job into doing real estate full time. Yours was, at that point when you're doing the $10 an hour job while you're on the phone doing $11 million deal. I mean, that's, you need that. I mean, there's got to be something that internally says, this is screwed, I'm done, I'm going this way. And like you said, Jake, if you're willing to put in the time to build to that point, you can do it, and you can remove yourself from that pain and move on. And,
I think it was the dishes that got him.
Yeah.
Dude, there's nothing like washing dishes when you're sitting there going, the guy doesn't show up again, and my brother's jumping around, going to barbecues and having fun. I'm in the back, pain. I'm like, I'm worth. And you know what? It's a life suck, because you say to yourself, I'm worth more than that. And I life is all about contributing and growing. And I felt like I wasn't growing. I felt like I wasn't. I thought I wouldn't say living a sinful life, but I'm here to do something more powerful than to wash dishes. I think we all are ultimately. And I think the people who can figure that out and step out and take a risk are going to live a much more abundant life, I think.
Got it. All right. I want to get into just a kind of a comparison of the two deals, specifically the first deal, and then kind of walk through that. And then I want to hear about your most recent deal, because from what I've kind of gathered and kind of watching you guys and a little bit that I've gotten to know you, the first deal seemed like this. Well, I'll let you. I want to hear from you. Just kind of the first deal. Was it 25 units?
Yep.
You got this. Your facts are usually more accurate than mine.
Well, you know what it was? When we bought it at the time, we were looking for a while. Jake forgot to mention that he blew his down payment on a house. The wife comes first, the partner always comes second, which is fine. I had some money. Jake had limited funds, so that's why I said, hey, listen, we'll have my brother come on as a partner. The deal was sitting on the market for a couple of years. It had become stale. Like, what's going to be happening now in this current market? Sellers are trying to get high numbers. They'll list their market. They'll put they'll put their property on the market for a high number, and it's going to sit there like this property was. It was on there for $750,000. And we went to them. We negotiated a price for $600,000. The broker was key in this transaction, guys. Brokers in multifamily are key. He got us 10% seller financing as part of the down payment. We had to come up with the additional 10%. So 10% is $600,000 plus closing costs was a total of $83,000. I'll never forget that number, because we had to come up with $83,000 between the three of us. It was a very, I wouldn't say distressed property. It was weekly rentals, 25 units. If anyone knows Fixer J out there, I craved and love these properties because they're easy to rent. They're cash flowing properties. This property had a lot of deferred maintenance on there. They were paying the cable bill. They were paying the electric. They were paying high garbage, high phone bills. They had no application fees. It was the classic mom and pop run property. There was a lot of value adds on this property, like we like to say. The rents were under rent. They were not under rented, but when you rent to weekly renters, every 3 to 4 weeks you're getting this massive turnover. So you're getting higher rents, but you're getting higher turnover. So what we ended up doing was we ended up going in there. First week, Jake goes and knocks on every door to see who's paying what, because we weren't even sure what the rent roll was. So we started out with that, and then after a couple of months of Jake saying, I can't deal with these weekly rentals, we decided to make it a monthly rentals. We had a resident manager on the property. We took our lumps. The septic fields went down about 6 months after. $9,000 went to there. But, ultimately we stabilized the property. I think it took about a year to stabilize the property, maybe a little bit less. But, we had the thing really rented up. It was our first property. But 4 months after we bought that property, we bought a second property 4 months later, which was 36 units. So the whole idea of buying your first property is that momentum, that ability to get that credibility from your first deal, and the ability to learn. We self-managed the property because Jake lived there. And we were able to do that because it was a multifamily and it was all in one area. Jake still had his full-time job, and I still had a full-time job. So we were both, I remember Jake sending up all the QuickBooks, all the files to do the bookkeeping. So I was really hands-on at that point.
It was so inefficient in the beginning. Oh my God, we were awful.
But you know what the great thing was?
We were so bad.
But you got it. I mean, I think that the thing that you guys are, just like you were saying, is that you were doing these two full-time jobs. You were able to jump in and you got this thing, and you were able to assess, okay, this isn't working, but kind of some of those skills you were talking about before that you applied to the property then, and you were able to make the efficiencies and make it be more of what you wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and it sounds like, a year to stabilize a property, that seems, I don't think a lot of people understand that right when they go to buy a property. I know I've got one that I've had now just for a year, and we're still in the stabilization, just from a lot of things that you were talking about, the utilities and all that fun stuff. But I do see, 2018 being a much more, a better year from, kind of the stillness of the water, and everybody's kind of used to the new program and that. But I think that just, again, it goes back to that, okay, you've got to go through some pain to get to that point. And the fact that you had a plan, and the two of you together saw and recognized and instilled these things and got it going. So you got the property, you got it stabilized. Is that when you were able to then take the cash out to, what point, how did the 36 unit, because I didn't realize it was so quick to the, and I didn't.
It was much quicker.
Whole list of properties, but I am curious about the you mentioned the momentum.
Yep.
You got the first property, the second property, and on it goes. Can you tell a little bit about? Let's hear just a little bit about the second property, and I guess the other thing is the financing. I'm kind of curious about, because you did say that you came up with 10%. The seller took a note for 10%. But if I recall, you guys have refinanced this at least once or maybe a couple of times, and has that not been kind of the help?
Yep. So then let me jump into that real quick. So then what happened with that property, we had it stabilized. We just refined it about a year and a half ago. We were able to pull out $160,000 on the deal. So it reappraised for over $800,000. So we had put it 83. We were able to pull out, and we distribute to ourselves about 160 grand. And what happened was a little bit of that refi money, in addition, we used to finish some roofs. We did a little bit of extra work on top of that, and the property is still cash flowing really well, because what happens is once we refied, we have better terms. We got a longer amortization. We got a 25-year amortization. We got a lower interest rate on the property, and our income had gone up a lot more, and our expenses had gone down. So actually, the mortgage payment basically stayed the same as when we bought the property for 600 grand, which is really key. Now, the second deal we ended up actually bringing in another partner. So we were 25% owners. The deal cost $850,000. We came up with 20% of the financing. So on that one was $160,000.
No, that was 15% down, wasn't it?
No, the second one, that's right. It was 15% down, because it was with another community bank. We had crappy financing terms though. We had a 3-year term on that, so it was going to reset after 3 years. The interest rate was about a little over 5%, and it was a 20-year AM. Same thing. Now, on that property, we got it. We took on our second partner, a third partner who was actually part of ours. It's just Jake, myself, and this third partner now. He had a much higher net worth. He had a great balance sheet, and he saw the whole thing of what we were doing. He liked the value adds. So we came up and we ended up buying the property. This property, we just refied the property 2 months ago, Jake. We brought it from that community.
Was that
bank.
the second time we refied it?
We refied it twice, second time. So the first one, and everyone on the call, we were buying these things with community banking. So we're buying it with recourse debt. So we're guaranteeing these things personally. Now in the last 3 to 4 months, we've been able to refi these things to non-recourse, to Freddie financing. So this property actually appraised over $1.2 million on this property. So we were able to pull out, over another couple $100,000. So we've taken our money out twice on this deal, only because there's 2 reasons why. We bought this thing right. We saw the market was. It's right down the street, a couple miles from the University of Tennessee. We're actually able to add a lot of value to this property by raising rents. The rents were $350 and $400 a month.
Yeah, they've gone up about $150 per door since we've got it.
Yeah, and we saw the demand there. And they're only 1-bedroom units, and it's a nice little community, brick community. We had a resident manager on there, which was really painful. That was a tough experience for us. We fired him, and I think that's one of the main reasons why we started the management company, is because we saw the pain that we had to deal with these resident managers. We wanted to do everything in-house.
Got it. So the one thing we really haven't talked about is the property's on the market for a long time. And again, I'm talking about the first 25-unit property. Motivated seller. Can you tell or talk a little bit about the motivation of the seller?
I mean, I think it's key. If then that's what we kind of talk about mom and pops, right? If there's not motivation there, if there's some kind of family infighting. We see family infighting's been one of the best. I think we've knocked out more deals because the family wants to kill each other than anything else, right? And that goes back to the mom and pop. And a lot of it comes from one of the family members is running the property and they're not doing a very good job, right? Or we've seen inherited properties go to a family and then there's this family infighting. One family member is in California, one family's in Tennessee. Whatever the case is, of that family infighting stuff is powerful and it's real. So that's a mom and pop motivated seller. We talked about the people from being out of state, maybe someone passed away. I mean, the list goes on what creates a motivated seller, but that's the key. You're not going to get a real deal unless there's some motivation on the seller side. So, we look for that. We kind of classify that as mom and pop, but also it's the operations. It's the mindset. Our first deal was totally mom and pop. It was literally a mom and pop that were in their 60s or 70s, and they were so burnt out from running the property. They were doing weekly rentals, and they were just getting these bad negative people in there, and they were burning them out. They're like, what the hell? Because they didn't put systems in place. They didn't professional up, as I like to say. The property we just bought, we bought 110 units. It was developed between 2008 and the last one was finished earlier in 2017. So, pristine, new quality asset. One of the brothers was in Florida. One of the brothers was in New York. They had it was an employee, resident manager, whatever you want to say, but not a lot of motivation. Hadn't raised rents in over 3 years. Rents are $150 per unit suppressed. We bought it at a 7 cap. They had some operations in place. They were using Excel for the rent rolls. They didn't have professional property management software. So it was a lot of the same kind of operational mom and pop qualities that we bought on our entire career, even though it looked fancy, right? So.
Yeah, no, I was going to say.
I don't know what your question was. I just went on a little.
No. The motivated seller, and you distilled that perfectly, because I think that's one of the things that I've come to recognize is that if you don't have a motivated seller, you might as well say that's a little rich for me. But when if you don't find somebody, I'd love to talk to you more, but I can't. Those numbers just don't work for me.
But here's the key, though. They may not be motivated today, but it's always worth hanging in there with them because they may be motivated tomorrow for certain, when circumstances change. So hang with them and don't be a prick. Right?
And I think the other important thing to talk about when you negotiate with somebody is don't assume they're just looking for a lower price, or don't assume you have to listen to what their motivation is. The first deal, we could have probably gotten it for cheaper, but listen, their motivation was just to get rid of the property, and they took a note. So on this 281 unit deal that Jake and I talked about, the $11 million deal, the guy gave us 20% owner financing. We didn't have to come up with any money out of pocket. Now, why was that? We're solving a problem from him. He knew that we were able to take this property out. We had the credibility to do this deal. He just wanted to get rid of the property. And what was he doing with the money? He was going to put the money in the bank at 0.6%. So instead, he took 20% down as a down payment, and we were giving him 5% on his note. So every property has a motivated seller that's going to do a problem. But figure out what the problem on the property is, because everyone is unique. And just listen to what they're going to say about how you can solve their problem, because it's all about solving their problem. We always go into life thinking about WIIFM, what's in it for me. It's really not what's in it for you. It's what's in it for them to sell. And like Jake said, this last property, they had an HOA component on it. They didn't know how to manage it. One of the brothers was getting paid excessively. So there's so many different avenues and problems going on that we knew about it. And that's the key to having a great broker. The broker should be able to tell you the story of what's going on with the property, so that you can craft your deal and you can craft your offer based on how you can solve their problem.
Oh, that's good. So now you guys have your own management company. You have now, are all the properties operated under the same brand, or do you have each property have its own identity, or?
Well, they all have their own names. We're working on a customer service model right now, and we're working on kind of a franchisable model where we have the same systems across the board, but branding the companies under the same flag. So that's all in the works, kind of similar to how the hotels do it. Probably get another couple of years before it's all super tight, but we're getting there.
Got it. And your total unit count now with this newest property?
It's about 850 apartment units and 22, I think, storage units that we have.
Oh, wow, you're in the storage units as well. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
No, they kind of came to us, so we'll say bring it on, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And in Knoxville, I'm assuming now that all the brokers know you and are bringing you opportunities. Is that fair?
They could bring some more, but hey, we're taking what we can get, right?
But I mean, again, and I think where we started was just that concentration that you're in the one marketplace, and you've identified it as an opportunity. It has the the job growth. And
we're looking for anywhere 3 hours around Knoxville, though. I would go anywhere within a 3-hour radius right now and feel extremely comfortable.
Because that's why Atlanta got popped up.
We hit city, anything that's basically 3 hours. We could hit Charlotte, we could hit parts of the Carolinas, we could hit parts of southern Kentucky, Middle Tennessee, Georgia, southern, we got the Chattanooga area. So we're just in a awesome spot where we can basically control a huge amount of real estate and some great cities. So, we feel very fortunate to be located where we are.
Got it. And as far as your next opportunity, still the buy right, finance right, manage right, is that still kind of the core principles that you guys are?
It's a three-legged stool, and that's where the wheelbarrow came from. It's you got to buy right on the front end, right? You got to have your parameters and nail it. We talk about the finance right, fixed long-term rate financing. Those are the two back legs of the wheelbarrow, and the manage right is the key. It's the wheel that's always turning, it's always going, it's always in motion. So, it really is. It comes down to three-legged stool. If you don't nail those three components, you're gonna struggle. So
I think the buy right is. Let's expand on it just a little bit more. I mean, what Jake and I were looking at back in 2013, we're looking at 8 caps. So we're looking at 10% cash on cash returns and maybe a 1.4 debt coverage ratio. Now, cap rates have compressed. A lot of markets, there's 6 caps. That's why we hadn't bought anything over the last 18 months. And, the last month and a half, we've had 2 deals. We've got a 3rd deal coming up because we've been really stringent. That's why we've been able to refinance and roll, as we like to say, because we buy them right. We've been able to buy 8 caps where the market's been accelerating and dropping, down to 6 and 7 caps, and we've been able to reposition them to 10 caps. That's how we've been able to do this. So if you're not buying them right, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to refi and roll. So if you've got to pass on deals, no deal is much better than a bad deal. That's what I've learned. I've learned that really hard, that painful lesson buying stuff in New York. So I told Jake, we're going to pass on a lot of stuff, but I'd rather pass on it. And I think the yield of 10% cash on cash return, I think that's something that we need from day one. We're not speculative. We don't go in there and say, hey, we're going to buy this interest only. This is going to work only if only if we have interest only. No, we're looking at it from day one because we want to cash flow. We do not want to be putting money into these properties.
No, that's definitely some words to live by. I know, I kind of fell a little bit into the one of the property and the brokers kind of worked us up a little bit on this one we bought, and there was plenty of room in the move up. I mean, the rents, you were talking about your 1-bedroom rents. I think this one was the lowest rent we had was like $420 a month. Market's like $8, and the guy was paying for cable and he was paying for water.
Wow.
And so after listening to you guys and recognizing the rubs, I remember Jake getting all excited about rubs the first time I talked to you guys. I was like, wait.
Easy now. Easy now.
No, but pass those utility bills on to the tenants there. And
sounds a little kinky, Darren.
Well, keep your mind out of the gutter there, Jake. But no, and the other thing too is, I mean, I was spending $800 a month on cable. That's what the guy was paying, $800 a month on cable. And the funny thing was, as soon as I let the cable company know we were going to be letting go of them, they go, "Oh, wait a minute, we got a sweetheart deal. We can do it for $200 a month," and they were so wanting to have just one customer as opposed to 12 customers. And I don't think any of the tenants are paying for cable right now. But anyway, it's I've learned a ton in talking with you guys over the years and following you and been applying it and stuff, and it's just so cool to hear about your where you've come from, where you're going, and just the momentum you guys have, and the systems you have in place, and definitely some things that myself and I'm sure the listeners can totally appreciate. Let me ask you this before we wrap up: what's the best way for our listeners to find out more about you guys, get in touch, or follow you on social media?
Yeah, I would say jakeandgino.com is always the easiest way. There's an invest now button there. So, in the future, if we ever put a deal together and you guys want to be a part of it, if we syndicated something, that's on there. So we're growing a list now in case, we want to do that. You got a couple hundred folks on there. But, we're on all the social medias, the Facebooks and all this stuff. You got the book on Amazon, Wheelbarrow Profits. I know Gino at JakeandGino.com. He loves getting emails from people, right?
Well, I always do. I like to talk to people. I mean, I think the most important thing that people can do is tune into our podcast. Our podcast, Real Our Profits. We're top 10 in real estate, top 5 in multifamily, and it's not a pitch fest. It's actual content. I mean, we've got over 110 shows. I mean, it's about multifamily. We've had some amazing guests on. I think the guests make the show. We've had a lot of Gen Biz guys on, but we do it. I mean, we've had a laundry show. How many guys do a show on laundry? How boring is that? But there's a revenue generator. I mean, it's really important. Let's say we do shows on insurance. We're talking to an insurance guy. Insurance can be truly boring. I mean, it's like watching paint dry. But that's a really important aspect of multifamily. I mean, so we really focus on multifamily. So if you guys want to listen to another empowering podcast, give our podcast a shot.
You know, and just as a thought, I'm wondering if maybe have you guys back. You know, I think sometimes people get all caught up in the property, not the market. They get caught up in, you know, maybe some things. But I think one of the things that, and you mentioned boring. I know I went through a kind of an analysis one time with an actual broker, and it's probably one of my most downloaded episodes. It was very technical, just about, you know, kind of your numbers and your ratios and all that kind of stuff. But I'm kind of curious, do you guys, when you're doing your analysis, do you guys have any kind of expense ratios that you look for each line item to be on a unit basis, percentage?
I know there's a couple of rules of thumb. Insurance is $250 per month. Repairs can be 10%. People like to say 50% expense rule. I'll give everybody a tip out there. When you're looking at a market and you're not sure what the expenses are in a typical market, call a mortgage broker. Call somebody who underwrites deals. Go to your community bankers. See what they think it is. Jake and I know in our market to run a property with, let's say, 30, 40, 50 units plus, you're going to need a little bit over $4,000 per month in operating costs to run this property. So you really need to know the market specific, because running a property in San Francisco is going to cost you $7,000 a door. Running a property in Albuquerque, New Mexico is going to cost you $3,200 per door. So it's really market specific. Some of them you can really pull out, like I said, as far as insurance, as far as repair. But I think everyone out there really has to go in, start underwriting deals that you get over the table, and make sure that's one of the biggest mistakes that the beginners do. They get these deals from brokers and they see these expenses at $2,500 per door, where you could run them. You would have a shot in hell to run these properties at that expense ratio. So go out there, learn what the properties really should be running for. And that's not a hard thing to do. Go get a multifamily broker or get a mortgage banker or a broker in that market, and they'll help you out.
I'd throw the expense ratios out the window, do a full budget. You know, I'd use them maybe in the beginning for a quick calc to see if you're interested, then get rid of them and then get an actual budget in place and see what it is. Otherwise, you're going to get burned.
No, I like it. No, and again, use the actual numbers. Don't fall under the lull of the wow, the performance. This is going to be great. You're going to kill it. So, love it.
Yes.
So. Anyway, hey, Jake and Gino, thanks again for taking the time. I totally appreciate it, and always look forward to hearing about you and what you guys are doing, and keep up the good work.
Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Darren. All right. Have a great day, guys.
All right. And for our listeners, if you like the show, share the show with someone you know. Send them a text. Let them know about Jake and Gino and how they've grown in Knoxville. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.